Hello, my friends. Welcome to this episode of BariAftercare, the podcast. And I wanted to remind you that if you are interested in being part of the full BariAftercare program, you can check it out by going to www.BariAftercare.com. It's BARI aftercare.com. And the BariAftercare program is not just for those who have had a surgical weight loss procedure. It's from anybody who is suffering from the disease of obesity, because this is a chronic disease and it affects 1 in 8 people. So there are a lot of people out there who could benefit from this podcast and from this program, where yes, we help people with we don't work on nutrition specifically, but we refer for that. But we encourage healthy nutrition, and we do address movement and exercise with videos. We do address healthy cooking. We do address the psychological and emotional issues, which to me are a huge part of addressing the disease of obesity. We go beyond bariatrics. We talk about being your best self and learning to engage in the activities that lead you closer to living the life you dream. So if you're interested, check it out. Today we're going to be talking about discovering, or perhaps better stated, rediscovering your relationship with food. Why are we talking about having a relationship with food? Well, you hear me talk about it. You hear people in the community talk about a relationship with food all the time. It's a real thing. We're going to talk about what makes for a healthy relationship or an unhealthy relationship, both with humans and with food and other inanimate things. And how is our relationship with food interwoven with our relationship with ourselves and interwoven in our relationships with others? Too often we think that our lives, the negative things in our lives, don't spill over to others in our worlds. But friends, it does. They do. The things that we do that harm ourselves definitely affect the people who love us and most of the people in our lives in general. Lastly, we're going to talk about, yes, I'm going to say this, talking to food and writing to food. But before we get to that, let's talk about this business about relationship as it relates to food. So I decided to take a different take on this and go for the dictionary definition of what in the world, what's a relationship anyway, because I wanted to give a good description of why we talk about having a relationship with food. Because I think most of us think humans, relationship, partner, friend, family member, human relationships. But a relationship is actually the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. So, there you have it. We are required, because we are human, right? We're, by virtue of our biological beingness, if that's a thing, we're required to eat and to stay alive. Therefore, we are connected to food, literally for our lives. So the way two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected, we are connected to food. It is a vital life source for us. Interesting. Here's the deal. We not only have a biological relationship to food, for sure we have that. We often have an emotional relationship with food. Believe it or not, I think there are some people out there who don't have much of a relationship with food. There are people, as foreign as it may seem to you and me, for whom food is really nothing more than fuel to their body. They don't really care what they eat. They're not big foodies. They're not into food. Give me the food. I got to stay alive. Then there are those of us who food has been a very complicated relationship in our lives. I've had a very complicated relationship with food since I was a very young teen. I developed an eating disorder, anorexia, And my relationship with food was very, very bad at that time. I didn't want to be anywhere near it. I didn't want it to be anywhere near me. I was angry that I needed it at all in order to survive. And I tried to survive on as little of it as possible. And then later in my life, actually, when I became pregnant with my first child, oh boy, did I love me some food. And that resulted in quite a bit of weight gain. After which, I had to again change the relationship that I had with food in order to lose the considerable amount of excess weight that I gained with that pregnancy. So our relationships with food can change over the years. There are people who have a very, I don't want to use the word, I was going to say intimate relationship with food, in that they love food. They love the taste of food. They love the atmosphere around food. They love the preparation of food. They love the presentation of food. Those are true foodies. So people have different relationships with food, and it's not about judging anybody's relationship with food. It's about acknowledging what your relationship with food is and making that the healthiest relationship it can possibly be in terms of managing your health, right? You may just absolutely love the taste of all the food in the world, and yet you have to limit the consumption of certain foods if you are to remain a healthy person. And some of us, the relationship with food is not about taste, but it's about comfort. Food can be a source of comfort, just as a person can be a source of comfort. That is where you go to the refrigerator or the bakery or the pizzeria or wherever it is you go when you're experiencing emotions that you don't like. Pizza. Food can be a source of companionship. If you feel alone and you feel maybe frightened, or you feel scared, or you're just not in a positive place, maybe you turn to food for almost a source of companionship, something to do, something to hang out with. So food can have a lot of emotional responses in us. And this isn't really a unique thing, unique just to food, although of course there are aspects of food that make it more alluring. It's a pleasant experience. Most of us enjoy the taste of certain foods, some more than others. And it's for most of us, it's a social kind of thing. So it brings people together. We go out to eat, we have fun, we laugh, we have friendship around food. It's time to gather family and have conversation. So those aspects of food may be a little bit unique, but we also have emotional relationships with other inanimate things like money, right? Some people love their money. For some people, it's like, yeah, I like having money. It makes my life easier, but it doesn't define who I am. Some people love books. My mother, I don't know that she loved anything more in life than she loved books. And she had an unhealthy relationship with books. And I'll tell you about that in a minute, if you can imagine. So we can have healthy relationships with food, unhealthy relationships with food, healthy relationships with money, or unhealthy relationships. Even something like a book, or video games, or clothing, or shoes, or purses, or whatever it is. We can have a healthy likeness. We enjoy, we get pleasure out of those things, but it can also turn into an unhealthy relationship if it's costing us more than it's giving to us. In other words, if it's causing problems in our lives, then there's a high cost to pay for our love of food or books or money or whatever it happens to be. So as we go through this talk, I want you to kind of think about, where is my relationship with food at this point in my life? Do I have a healthy relationship with food? Do I have an unhealthy relationship with food? Is my relationship with food correlated with my body image? Because for most of it, it is. Is it tied into an unhealthy mindset of the dieting culture where there's, excess or there's extreme limitations, or we go the other way and there's excess of excess? So think about your relationship with food, and also think about, as we go through this, do you have relationships that have turned unhealthy in other areas of your life? Because the truth is that for people who maybe have an unhealthy relationship with food or alcohol or shopping or gambling, it's not usually just one area in which they are struggling. So it's very common for people who struggle with food issues, who have an unhealthy relationship with food, to have an unhealthy relationship with money, to have an unhealthy relationship with sex. Those three things kind of go together according to research. So I'm just saying, question yourself, be honest with yourself, be patient and kind with yourself, but let's look toward getting our relationships with people and things to a healthier perspective, a healthier place in our life, so that we can work toward the life we dream of living. Because things that have gotten out of balance are often detrimental in our lives, and we want to live our best lives, so we don't want to have any detrimental relationships, human or otherwise, taking up our time, our energy, our emotional space. All right, so we also have relationships with people, right? So the relationships that we have with people or food or money and all the things can be healthy or unhealthy, and they can maybe have healthy and unhealthy aspects. So let me tell you about my mother's healthy and unhealthy relationship with books. She loved to read. The woman loved probably nothing more in life than to read, which is a great healthy thing to do. You learn a lot from reading books. Your vocabulary expands. Your imagination is live and active. You can, learn about all kinds of things when you read. She loved fiction. She loved murder mysteries. When my mother was older, this is just a fun little story, a good thing about my mom and her reading love. She lived with me and my husband for the last 7 years of her life. And at that point in time, we were living in a small little town. And so I would take her to the library on Saturdays. Well, she got to know the librarian there, and they would chit chat. And my mother, the librarian, knew what kind of books that my mother loved. And so throughout the week, she would collect, because my mom would get 7 to 10 books a week. I'm not kidding. And she would read most of the day. And to the point that she had read so many books at the library that the librarian started writing in pencil her initials in the books, so that if she went to pick out some books, she could tell, oh yeah, I already gave her this one. But she would have a stack of books for my mother, usually about 7, to give her at our Saturday library outing. It was the kindest, one of the most generous acts of human service and kindness that I've ever witnessed. It was really a beautiful thing. So my mother loved to read, but how this became was an unhealthy thing earlier in her life was that when she and my father were together, it was not a real pleasant relationship. And so sometimes and there were 6 kids. So my mother had 6 children, and my mom and dad, and we were all living in the same house, small house. But to avoid dealing with him, she would lay on the couch and read. Not a problem, except that you have 6 young children who need all sorts of things like children do. And sometimes my mother would read to the exclusion of being there for her children. So reading can be a great thing, but at times in her life, reading became a way to avoid life, to avoid her feelings, but it caused damage in some ways to the family. So things can, shift and change. Toward the end of her life, it was a wonderful thing. It gave her a way to stay busy and her mind active, and she didn't have much else to do with her time, so she would read. So think about that. And all relationships at their core have one thing in common. All of our relationships with people, our relationship with food, our relationship with money, religion, shopping, spending, whatever it is, sex, all of the things, all of those things, the degree to whether or not they are healthy or unhealthy have one thing in common. And I'm not mentioning that till the end. You probably already know what it is anyway. All right, let's talk about the difference between a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship. So I looked up what is considered to be the aspects of a healthy relationship with a human being. And then we're going to look at these characteristics in relation to food and other things. So here are the aspects of a healthy relationship with humans. And like I said, we're going to extrapolate and talk about not all of these things because they are specific to humans, but a majority of these things as elements that relate to our relationship specifically with food for this podcast. So a healthy relationship is characterized by respect. And in the case of humans, it's mutual respect, respect for one another. A healthy relationship is characterized by honest and open communication. So I'm going to be genuine. I'm not going to hold back the truth. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to lie. All right? A healthy relationship is characterized by trust, by compromise, by individual autonomy, meaning I'm going to be me, you're going to be you, I'm going to respect you, you're going to respect me, I'm going to let you be you, you're going to let me be me. And the ability to maintain personal boundaries, where both partners feel valued and supported while allowing each other to be themselves. Okay, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, relationships, most of them can have healthy aspects and they can have unhealthy aspects. So think about the people in your life. And you might want to say, oh my gosh, my relationship with my spouse is excellent. It's as close as perfect as you can get. Well, if that's true, then I applaud you. But for most of us normal human beings in long-term relationships, we can say, you know what, my relationship is mostly good at this period of time. I've been married for over 40 years. And that relationship, like my relationship with food and my relationship with money and relationship with things, has changed over the course of those years. And at this time in our marriage, we are at a really good place. Does that mean things are perfect? Not by a long shot, right? We drive each other crazy with this or that, our little idiosyncrasies. We snap at each other about this or that. But we have learned to come back and say, I'm sorry, I took that out on you. Or I'm famous for saying, Steve, not right now. You might want to just kind of back out of my office because I may be struggling with technology, which I do a lot. And then I get frustrated and I don't want to take it out on him. So I have learned to say, just back out. Slowly, kindly, just get out of here. Because I know myself and I'm likely to scream and holler at him when it has nothing to do with him. So we learn ways to make our relationships better and to protect those we love. But there have been times in my marriage where, oh, buddy, it was not good. There have been probably 3 or 4 times over those 40 years where we went for weeks and months and we were just at each other a lot, right? It was like he didn't like me or I didn't like him or we didn't like each other, and it was a tense time. But the relationship was important enough to both of us that we said we're going to do what it takes to figure out what's the obstacle here. I talk often about here, you know what to do, and maybe you're not doing it. If you know what to do and you're not doing it, what are the obstacles that are in the way of you doing what you know what to do? So we knew from a lot of therapy what we needed to do to work through some of these obstacles, but at times we weren't doing that. And so we had to look at ourselves individually and go, what's going on with me? that this obstacle is in the way again and learn and work through it. So some of those times it took some time. My relationship with things like clothes and shoes in particular, and purses. So when I was a kid, 6 kids. My dad worked, my mother didn't, like was common back in the day. And we went to a private school, and so we wore uniforms to school. And so play clothes, we didn't have a whole lot of them. And what we did have were a lot of hand-me-downs from cousins, because I had a ton of cousins that were older than me. Our family didn't have the money to buy a lot of clothes, and clothes weren't the thing that they are so much today either. So I got a job when I was 14 years old and made my own money so that I could buy my own clothes. And that taught me a really valuable lesson about working hard, good hard work ethic, and working for what I wanted. And so I didn't ever have a lot of money for things like clothes or extra shoes or handbags, any designer handbags. And then when we were raising our children, I was in school. So I wasn't working. So my husband was working, but I was paying out student loans up here. I was paying out fees for school for years and years and years. And so again, we were fine. We made ends meet, but we didn't have extra money. We took out all the student loan money we could just to provide our family with, a normal, healthy childhood. They had everything they needed and a lot of what they wanted, but there was no excess. And so I certainly wasn't spending money on fancy clothes for myself or very many shoes. My husband's a CPA, he's very frugal, and we didn't have extra money. So it wasn't until about, I'm going to say 15 years ago, in my late 40s, early 50s, when our kids were grown and finally out on their own, doing their own things, our kids had to get a job at 16. So they had to, like if I bought a pair of jeans, I'm like, I'll give you this much money. This is all I'm spending on a pair of jeans. You want a pair of jeans that cost twice that? It comes out of your fund. Because I think that is a very important lesson for kids. And they worked through college as well. So we never had excess money until our kids were launched and, finally we had a little bit of money. And I want you to know that my relationship with shoes and clothing and purses changed at that time because I had never had the means to have any of those things. And so even when I did, so I bought almost all of my work clothes from one store because their style fit me. I liked them. They were not inexpensive, but I never, ever bought off the regular rack. Forever I shopped on their clearance racks, which was fine because I still got, it was a higher quality. They were nice. They fit me well. And then I bought all kinds of shoes. And I started buying a couple purses a year. And it was great, great fun. I enjoyed that period of time in my relationship with those things. And now I work from home. So my relationship with clothes and shoes and purses has changed again. I don't have any need for fancy work clothes. In fact, I've gotten rid of 90% of those. I used to have probably 35 pairs of pants in my closet or more. I probably have 8 because I don't go anywhere. Right? I have a couple pairs of jeans. I have a couple pairs of pants that I can wear out. I'm good. So that relationship has changed once again. My relationship with food has changed dramatically over the years. So where are you now? Where have you been? Where do you want to be with your relationship with food? So, you might have some relationships, some friendships that are healthier now than they were in the past or vice versa. And we want, right? We want to have healthy relationships. But let's look at our lives, all right? My healthiest relationships are with my core family members, my husband, my children, my grandchildren, and a few close friends, 4 or 5 of them. We can be all of those things most of the time, not perfectly, but remember, mutual respect, open and honest communication, trust, compromise, individual autonomy, personal boundaries, equal feeling valued and supported. But then we go to my family that I grew up with, sisters, brother. A little less of that with my siblings. There's always been some contention. There's always been very different value systems. And so for a while in our younger adult years, there was a lot of conflict, a lot of tension, a lot of strife. And now as we've gotten older, we are much more cordial and respectful and pleasant, but there's not that close connection. What about coworkers? Maybe you have some coworkers you're really close with, some you keep at a distance. How's your relationship with food? We're going to talk mostly about that. What about money? How's your relationship with money? Do you respect and value the place that money holds in your life? Are you excessive with your spending? Are you excessive with your eating? Do you restrict yourself with eating? Do you restrict yourself with money? What about your job? How's your relationship with your job? So think for a minute about one of your closest friends, all right? Bring to mind one of your closest friend. And then think about one or two aspects of that relationship, whether it's things you do together socially or things you do for fun or things that you really value about that person. And then ask yourself, is there anything that would make this relationship better? Can I think of anything that would make this friendship better from my perspective? Maybe, you could be more honest about how you felt about, that conversation you had 2 years ago and you're still holding on to some resentment. Or maybe it was that vacation and you felt like you paid for so much more of it and you never shared that, or whatever it happens to be. What about your partner or your spouse? Are there a couple of things that maybe you could tweak in that relationship, spending more time together, or sharing things that, this really upsets me when you do that, or I would really value if you would blah, blah, blah. Are there a couple of things about your partner or your spouse? Same with your kids, your siblings, parents. And do you know what to do in your head? Do you know if I would stand up for myself a little more, this friendship would probably be better? Or if I would set boundaries with these work relationships, things would probably be a little better. Or my mother, if I could set some boundaries with my mother, oh my gosh, maybe things would be better. So think about those kinds of things. So maybe you know what to do, but you aren't doing them and you're suffering in some way. I don't set the boundaries with my mother and therefore I'm at her beck and call. My fault, but I just don't feel like I can bring myself to set those boundaries. Or maybe with your spouse, you'd like to have a little more alone time, but you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or whatever it happens to be. So identify what those obstacles are. And I'm going to guess that the obstacles reside within yourself. I'm afraid to be honest. I say I don't want to hurt their feelings, but the truth is I don't want to feel how I feel if they are hurt. I don't want to feel the discomfort I feel knowing that I upset them. So most of it's going to turn back to me, to I. Most of the obstacles that interfere with my being able to set boundaries with people, or maybe with food, or to limit my use of these things have to do with me. Maybe I'm an emotional eater. And so the obstacle is I don't know how to deal with my emotions in a healthy way, so I turn to food. So the learning to deal with emotions in a healthy way would be the obstacle. So we've got to identify those obstacles so that we can work toward resolving those things within ourselves. And even if it's something going on with the other person, the obstacle is within us because we haven't said anything to the other person. Or if we have said something to the other person and they continue to do the thing that's bothering us and we choose to stay in that situation, again, it's about us. Or learning to stay in the relationship but have some boundaries around that issue. All kinds of nuances there. But we have to look at ourselves and say, what are the obstacles? What can I do to change those? And what things can't I change? Because there may be things going on with the other person that you really can't change, but you can always look at your own part and say, what's my part and what can I do with this? So chances are you can identify some things, whether it's your relationship with food or people, that might make those relationships healthier. The next question to ask yourself, okay, this is a tough one. And this is one I've really been asking people a lot lately, especially when it comes to food. Do I really want to change the relationship I have with food or with shopping or with sex or with this person or with that person? And I'm guessing your first thought is going to be, of course I want to change my unhealthy relationship with food, with my mother, with my spouse. Of course, duh. And let's take mom. Let's just do a hypothetical here. Let's just say, yeah, I want to change my relationship. Of course, I'd like to have a better relationship with my mother. And you know that one of the things that you could do that would improve that relationship, because she told you, is she wants you to call her more often. So I could improve that relationship. She wouldn't hound at me. She wouldn't nag me about that if I just call her more often. But I know that if I call her more often, she's going to ask me to do more things for her. And I know I have a trouble saying no to my mom and doing things for her. So then my time's really going to be caught up in doing more things for my mother. And do I really want to take her more places and do more things for her? No, I don't. So now I'm going to circle back to that question. Do you really want to do the thing that would change the relationship and make it better? At least for mom, right? Excuse me, call me more often, call me more often. Why don't you call me more often? Because I don't want to do more things for you, right? That's the obstacle. Yet the real answer here, the healthy response, is to say, Mom, I'd be happy to call you more often. What holds me back from doing that is my fear of not being able to tell you no if you ask me to do more things for you. I don't have time to do more things for you. I'll be happy to call you more often if you can agree not to ask me to do more things for you than I'm already doing. That would be the healthy response. But the obstacle is I'm afraid to have that conversation with my mom. We need to learn to do those things, right? So if you want to have the healthy relationship, you have to grow enough within yourself or get the help to grow enough to be able to have that honest conversation with your mother. Because remember what that healthy relationship criteria was? The ability to have open and honest communication. Yeah, but you don't know my mother. She's just going to whatever. She may. And that's something you have to deal with in therapy. Because regardless of what mom does or doesn't do, you have to do what's the healthiest thing for you. And that may be not to say anything, but you need to talk through that. And you need to learn to deal with the obstacles that prevent you from living the life that you want to live. Let's do another example. Let's say you're real standoffish with the coworkers, but on the other hand, you're a little bit envious that they seem to socialize or go out to lunch more with you, and so you'd kind of like to be considered more part of the group, and but if you did engage more in the water cooler chatter or become more social, then you fear that they're going to be more comfortable coming to you and asking you for a favor. Can you help me with this project? Can you help me do that? Would you mind doing this for me? Would you mind doing that? Or maybe they're going to say, would you be a chair for this committee? Or could you help us plan that party? Or, ask you to volunteer. It's like, I don't want any of that. So you're kind of caught, right? Because let's say the obstacle is, I have trouble saying no in this environment too. Have trouble saying no to my mom, but I also have trouble saying no. I can't help you, and my time is so booked up that I'd rather stay standoffish. But you wouldn't really. What would help is if you would get what you want in those relationships, the friendship, the camaraderie, and learn to say, I just can't help you with that right now. I've got too much on my plate. You know what? I can't help with that committee right now because I'm chairing this other committee and that would just be too much. But your struggle to say those things and be honest makes that a less than healthy relationship for you. So those are some examples, but let's get down to brass tacks here and let's talk about your relationship with food. Duh, Connie. Of course I want this relationship to change with food. That's why I'm listening to you. But here's the deal. If you change your relationship with food, then what? Then what? Because things will change. Things will absolutely change if you change your relationship with food. And maybe some of that frightens you. So we'll come back to this in a few minutes, because this is the meat of the subject here, right? So we talked about a healthy relationship, but what does an unhealthy relationship with food look like? Well, you can tell me and I can tell you, because we've both probably been there. My unhealthy relationship with food at a time was avoiding it at all costs. Now, I knew I needed to eat something to keep living, and I knew I needed energy, and so I developed a real unhealthy relationship with sugar at that time. Sugar was my source of energy. I really liked sugar, and I chewed bubble gum all day long. And I'm not kidding you when I share this with you. This is going to blow you away. 1 year, from the time I went to college and quit eating, I didn't quit eating, obviously, but I minimally ate food, and I chewed bubble gum. I got 14 cavities. 14 cavities in 1 year. Yes, I did, because I chewed sugar all day long, so I didn't eat food, and I had energy. Not a healthy relationship with food. Did damage to my body. Absolutely. That is an unhealthy relationship with food. When I got pregnant with my son, and it was a bit of a stressful time, and during part of that pregnancy, my husband traveled for his job, and I was staying with his father and stepmother. And man, she could cook, and she cooked, and I would sit and eat. She made homemade jam, and I would eat toast with butter and jam. I mean, constantly. And I gained a tremendous amount of weight during that pregnancy. Again, very unhealthy. Looking back, I was eating at my emotions. I was scared. I was a little depressed, not living with my new husband. I was, a lot of things. And food comforted me. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it was like, oh, I can finally eat all the stuff. I don't know, but it was unhealthy. And so what about you? How did your unhealthy relationship with food manifest? Frequent dieting, severe food restrictions, can't have this, and then I have all of it when I quit not having it, or an obsession with healthy eating can be an unhealthy relationship with food. Like, I could never put anything unhealthy in my mouth, right? That is another food addiction. Food addiction results in an unhealthy relationship with food until you start treating that addiction. Emotional eating is an unhealthy relationship with food and with yourself, BT dub, because you're not dealing with whatever your emotions are about. You're using food like other people use alcohol, or maybe you use food and alcohol, or food and shopping, or food and sex, or food and gambling, right? So emotional use of things is often leading to an unhealthy relationship with that thing. So if you're eating in response to stress or boredom or fear or anger or resentment, rather than physical hunger, it's probably leaning toward an unhealthy relationship with food, which, as we all know, lead to this horrible, horrible, horrible cycle of shame and guilt, guilt and shame. Oh my God, I did it again. I ate all those things, and now I feel guilty, and now I feel like I'm a bad person, and I'll never, and the cycle, the cycle, the cycle can also lead to an eating disorder, which it did in my case. And for other people, it leads to binge eating, or other people, it leads to bulimia. Other people, it leads to bulimorexia. It also may lead to obesity. All these things are incredibly detrimental to our health, first and foremost, but it's also detrimental to our minds. We feel bad about ourselves, we feel out of control, we feel helpless, we feel scared, we feel hopeless, we feel stuck, and it interferes into our relationships. And a lot of people feel like it doesn't, but it does. When we're feeling that way about ourselves, it bleeds into our relationships. We're not at our best. We feel bad about ourselves. We're going to take it out on other people, or we're going to isolate from other people, or we're going to, barrage them with our incessant thoughts about these things, and that's going to push them away. It affects our kids because we teach them unhealthy ways of having a relationship with food. So it's really detrimental to mind, body, spirit, self, others. So these negative relationships we develop, either with people or inanimate things, affect our lives, our entire lives, not just our health, but our mind, our bodies, our spirits, our human relationships. So we're going to go with the odds that if you're listening to this podcast, you might have somewhat of an unhealthy relationship with food, or you have had in the past. Either way, healthy or unhealthy relationship with food in the present, think of the unhealthy relationships you've had with any non-human entities. And again, like I said, it's often more than one. But where did this come from? What leads us to an unhealthy relationship with food? What leads us to an unhealthy relationship with our physical bodies in terms of sex? What leads us to an unhealthy relationship with spending, or an unhealthy relationship with gambling, or an unhealthy relationship with alcohol? What leads to the, where did this come from? How did we get there? Well, let's look at first our environment. Did you grow up in a family where you were taught unhealthy food habits, where there was a free-for-all for snacks after school, or where candy was abundant? I just read in some magazine, I hope this is not true, that some celebrity couple had a candy room at home for their kids. What? Not healthy, right? Not a healthy environment. What kind of, did you come home and you were alone after school, so you were a little lonely and maybe a little afraid, and so the emotional eating component began? You went to the cupboard and you had that free-for-all, and so you ate all the things. So maybe you were a family that, you ordered in all the time, or maybe you ate out all the time, or you were given sodas and sugary drinks and juice and Kool-Aid and all those things all the time. Maybe there was a lack of education. Maybe your caregiver wasn't educated about healthy nutrition, and therefore you didn't learn much about healthy nutrition. I didn't learn anything about nutrition. I ate really unhealthy food as a kid, except for dinner. The healthy part came from the environment. My family were not big foodies. But what we were fed, total crap. Breakfast was sugar cereal, right? You get up, you get your cereal, you go off to school. Sugar cereal. Lunch, check this out. Every day of my childhood, grape jelly sandwich on white bread with butter. Zero nutrition there. A Hostess Ding Dong, and some potato chips. I did have a carton of milk. That was good. That was my lunch. After school, cookies, Nothing excessive, but yeah, if we had a snack, it was cookies or chips. And then we would have a healthy dinner: meat, vegetable, potato. That's what we ate. Totally unhealthy. Didn't learn a thing about nutrition. So I had to educate myself. I had to learn. All right, so what did you learn about eating from where you grew up? That makes an impact on how you eat as an adult. What were the attitudes you experienced in your environment? Now, I think about this about my own life, but you think about yours and think, because I don't remember my mom talking about her weight a lot, or she and her friends talking about their weight a lot, but I do know we always had these AIDS caramels, the AIDS. I don't know what they stood for, but they were weight loss. And we would eat them too. I don't know. They were just sitting in a box on the counter. As we got into our teen years, my sister, there were 5 girls, we would eat these AIDS caramels. And I remember, I don't know, looks were very important. Although I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I remember there was a lot of emphasis by my father about women and how they looked. So I remember that. But what did you see? What was your experience with the women and the men in your life in terms of what they said and what they demonstrated in terms of weight? And then there's society, which we know is a nightmare for all of us. So I read this article by a medical doctor, and I'll put the link because I don't remember the name or where it was, but I will put the link in the show notes, who says, our view of the world, listen to this is profound. Our view of the world and of ourselves is programmed, it's programmed by our entire life experience from the time of birth until this present moment. It's programmed. We were programmed as children in terms of how we were fed, in terms of what our opinions about religion were, politics, body image, all the things, education. We were programmed. It's just how life works. We're programmed by our amount of education, by our amount of money, by the people that our parents associate with, by the things they tell us about things, by the things that our teachers tell us. We are programmed until the present moment in which we have a choice. Most of it originates from the messaging that society, parents, relatives, friends, and colleagues feed us about who we should or should not be, what we should or should not be doing. We are programmed. So you may have been programmed to eat fast food. You may have been programmed, like I was, to grow up and smoke and drink, until you make a choice to say, I'm a product of what I was raised in. I now, as an adult, have choices. And you examine, where did this come from? And then you make a healthy choice. And sometimes that doesn't happen until our 30s, 40s, or 50s. And a lot of times it doesn't happen at all. So we have to think about the fact that we don't get to blame society. We don't get to blame our parents, our relatives, our friends, but it had an impact. If you were bullied as a kid, it had an impact on how you felt about yourself. If your parents or relatives or coaches or teachers didn't have much belief in you, that impacted how you felt about you. And therein, my friends, lies a great deal of our obstacles. So let me come back to that in just a second. So our ideas about who we are, our ideas about what we're capable of, about what people think of us, are based on all those experiences, and then we create a story. I'll never get this right. I'll always succeed at everything I do. I'll never make it past high school. You know what? I could run a company someday. It's what we're taught and what we ingest and what we decide about ourselves. And then we've created our story, and then we stick to it. So we reinforce that to ourselves over time. And if we got good messages, then we're likely to feel pretty good about ourselves, and this is going to show up in our lives. And we're going to treat ourselves well. So maybe you got good messages about your work ethic or about your intelligence, but you got really bad messages about your weight and what you looked like. So the messages can be mixed, right? Or maybe you got mostly unpleasant messages. You're either going to play those out by how you treat yourself and how you allow other people to treat you, or in that case, you may overcompensate, in which case you're going to work toward being perfect. I feel like I'm not good enough, so I'm going to present to the world that I am perfect. That's what I did. Not that I got horrible messages, but that somehow I must have gotten some because I internalized those as I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not whatever enough, because I felt like crap about myself and my behavior reflected that. And that's what happens until we figure out it doesn't have to be that way, right? And what I did was, even though I didn't feel good about myself, I put on this false air that I had it all together. And it's going to collapse, which it did for me, because eventually we're going to live up to our own internal expectations. It's what we do. We treat ourselves the way we feel about ourselves, and that may be different in different areas of our lives. It's not it's not an all-encompassing thing. So different messages about different areas of life, right? Maybe you're the smart one. You're going to be really successful at work, but the sister is the pretty one. So you never, you try to look so pretty, but she's the pretty one. Or maybe so-and-so is the funny one, and you might think you're funny, but you never get acknowledged for that because they're the funny one. So we get these roles. They're the hardworking one. They're the successful one. They're the intellectual one. They're the whatever. And then we tend to put ourselves in situations and play those things out. That's why maybe you're really great in some areas of your life, but this one area it's got you. We need to look, we need to look, we need to dig, we need to dig. So if that relationship you have with food is not healthy, let's go to these healthy aspects, right? If you don't have respect for your body, one of those criteria for a healthy relationship, respect. If you don't respect your body and treat it well by putting healthy food into it, and if you don't move, that's unhealthy. You are not using that criteria of a healthy relationship. I don't respect my body, as evidenced by I feed it poorly and I don't move it. If you don't have the most honest and open communication with yourself about how you eat, one of those other characteristics of a healthy relationship, you can make excuses for your lack of effort. I don't have time. The kids are so involved. It takes too much time to meal prep. We're on the go all the time. Not honest. Not honest. You're deceiving yourself. It's so much cheaper to eat out. No, it's not. It's not. And we'll talk about that in another podcast. So you're not being honest about how much effort you're making to carve out time to prepare dinners or to prepare your food or to keep your house clean of all the junk. You're making excuses. Well, my kids want that food. They can get it at school. You're making excuses for having it there for yourself. That's honest for some of you. I'm not saying that's true for all of you, right? I don't have time to exercise. Well, make time. You make time for your TV shows, you make time for the internet, you make time for your phone. Open and honest communication. Respect, honest communication with yourself, right? If you lack trust, another one of the characteristics of a healthy relationship, if you lack trust about your choices, my ability to make choices, that's an obstacle, right? I don't trust myself to stop eating or to make healthy choices or to go into the grocery store and not bring all the crap out of there with me. If you lack the ability to compromise where food is concerned, meaning, yes, I'll allow myself to have one of whatever, but I don't trust myself, so I'm going to have 4 or 5 of them. So are you willing to make that compromise? Yes, I'll allow a little, but I'm not going off the rails. Do you trust yourself to do that? If you lack individual autonomy, I'm not going to exercise unless somebody goes with me. I'm not going to do it unless somebody else helps keep me accountable. If you lack the ability to set and maintain personal boundaries with food, I don't allow this in my house. I don't allow food in my car. I stay away from that because I always overindulge in it. Can you set boundaries with yourself? If you can't do these things, then you need to look in the mirror and ask your questions, because those things I just talked about were what we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast about what makes a healthy relationship. Respect. Are you showing respect for your body? Honest communication. Are you blowing smoke up your butt with excuses? Trust. Do you trust yourself where food is concerned? Compromise. Can you compromise and balance? Maybe I'll eat unhealthy today, but I'll make up for it the rest of the week. Can you compromise and balance? Do you have autonomy? I'll do my workout even if nobody's going to do it with me. Can you set boundaries? If not, friends, let's do this. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you really want to change it? Because you already know how. You know it's important to meal plan. You know it's important to meal prep. You know you need to learn some intuitive eating skills. You know you need to eat mindfully. You know you need to eat a variety of foods. You know you need to eat protein first. You know you need to eat the fruits and the vegetables and the whole foods and cut down on the fast food and cut down on the highly processed foods. Can you learn to enjoy food without guilt, shame, and judgment? So, that same MD that I mentioned earlier that I'll put in the show notes said, you may have noticed that facts rarely change anyone's mind. You know the facts. You know what to do. The only option is if you choose to become aware of your life lens and change it. Hallelujah. I love him. It was a hymn for saying that. And he says, unfortunately, change creates anxiety and we resist that. So what this says is that if I know what to do, but I'm not doing what I know to do, then I need to look at the obstacles. But I don't want to look at the obstacles because they cause me anxiety. And it means I have to change. And that scares me. So look at the cost of your unhealthy relationship with food, health, relationships, lack of self-worth, lack of self-esteem, talking to yourself harshly. What are the uncomfortable changes that cause you anxiety? If you change your relationship with food, does it mean your friendships will change? Yes, it does. Maybe you and your friends do nothing but go out to eat together and you're going to feel like they don't want to hang out with you anymore. What would weight loss mean to you? Would it cause you vulnerability? It might. Oh my God, people are looking at me like that and I don't like it. Or they're talking to me and I liked it better when they didn't talk to me. Or they're inviting me places and I'm a loner. Things are going to change, right? Maybe you're going to have to deal with issues that are covered up with emotional eating. If I quit eating emotionally, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to learn new skills, and that scares me. And what if I have to deal with all these feelings all of a sudden? That really scares me. Do I really want to change this relationship? Oh my God, I have fear of success. What if I'm successful? Then I have to keep doing this forever? No, I haven't been able to do it before. I'm afraid of success. I'm also afraid of failing because people expect me to fail. And what if I fail? And then they're going to say, you failed again. I don't want to deal with all of that. Other people are going to have different expectations of me. They're going to expect me to participate and do more. And I'm afraid of that. And I don't know if I can do that. Oh. So yes, of course you want to change your relationship with food, but crap, do you really? Because look at what you're up against. And how is it I change my lens? What do you mean change my lens? So look at what you're getting from that relationship with food, the benefits of food or carrying this extra weight. It's the opposite of what will change. Maybe your social life is all built around this and your friendships are all built around this. So do I want to change that or give that up? Maybe I have this sense of belonging with these people, and we're all foodies and we all eat together all the time. Do I want to let that go? Food gives me comfort. Do I want to deal with the things that I don't want to deal with because I have comfort in food? It gives me a distraction, like my mom's books gave her a distraction. Focusing on dieting and weight and calories and this and that keeps me from dealing with life. But as the MD said, facts aren't going to change your mind. No, nutrition isn't going to change your mind. The only option is to choose to become aware of your life and change it. So I have to identify those obstacles: fear of change, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of losing friends, fear of people expecting more of me, fear of my not trusting myself. And all of that points to me. And if you're looking in the mirror, it points to you. And those are oftentimes the things that keep us stuck. And often it's, I don't believe in myself. I have shame. People called me names. They didn't believe in me, so I don't believe in me. We need to change this lens. That's the lens you need to change. I can. I am capable. I can make different choices. I can stand up for myself. I can learn to set boundaries. I can learn to say no. I can learn to speak my truth. I can learn to have a healthy relationship with me, wherein I show respect for myself by eating healthy, by moving my body. The way we treat our bodies reflects how we feel about ourselves, and you can like that or you don't have to like it. But it is often the case. Our relationship with food is often a reflection of how we feel about ourselves in that area, not globally. Your actions as a parent may reflect your belief that you're a great parent. Your actions at work may reflect that you're an awesome employee or an awesome boss or an awesome leader. The way you treat others is a reflection of how you value them. But how you relate with food is a reflection of how you feel about yourself in that area of your life. A metaphor for how you feel about yourself in that area of your life. And that tells people something about you. We give ourselves away. Nobody is shocked. Now, we talked in our last podcast episode about the fact that there are things that you can't control with your weight, right? These aren't the things I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the things you can take responsibility for, the things you can put effort into, the things you can change. And you can change what you put in your mouth. You can change if you prepare healthy food. You can change if you eat out all the time. You can change if you buy all the things at the grocery store. You don't even have to go to the grocery store. You can change whether you get out there and move your body. You can change those things, but you won't change those things until you start to realize, until you change the lens that I'm worth it, I'm important enough. No matter what anybody said to me about my weight or my body or how I looked, I can do what I can do. And I can accept that I can't change that I have PCOS, and I can't change that my thyroid crashed, and I can't change this, but I can change this and this and this and this. And I'm going to love myself even though I can't change my thyroid condition. And I'm going to take care of my health the best I can. And I'm going to change the lens that says, no, you can't. And I'm going to change the lens that said, it'll never change. And I'm going to change the lens that says, I can learn to deal with my emotions in healthy ways. And I'm going to change the lens that says, I can't set boundaries with people or food. Yes, you can. You can learn those things. You can feel the fear and you can do it anyway. You expect your kids to. You expect other people to. You can do it. You've done it in many areas of your life, right? So, You can develop that healthy relationship with food by eating in a way that nourishes your body. It will affect how you feel about yourself, so it's nourishing your body and your mind. You can learn some of the mindfulness tools. You can learn some of the hunger signals. You can learn about nutrition. You can learn to eat with and still enjoy food without the without the excess that leads to the guilt and the shame and the anxiety. So you got to dismantle these negative food thoughts and the behaviors, right? And learn and get help from people who are trained in this area so that you can eat the nutrient-dense foods that your body needs and still enjoy foods that your taste loves, your palate loves. Because a healthy relationship with food is personal. It's flexible. It's adaptable to your needs and your lifestyle. So I encourage you, explore the origins of your relationship with food, environment, family, friends, society, comfort issues, expression of how you feel about yourself, and explore the benefits of not changing and the benefits of changing, right? Becoming closer to living the life that you dream of through effort, right? And always, it's about our relationship with ourselves, whether it's an unhealthy relationship with money or gambling or sex or alcohol or shopping or the internet. It's about how we feel about ourselves. Are we hiding? Are we using these things as emotional numbing mechanisms for whatever reasons? Those are the things that get in the way of our doing what we know to do and following through. So those are the obstacles. We have to work on our own obstacles, right? Check in with that relationship with yourself. It all stems from there. All of our relationships start with our relationship with yourself. So look at that list of characteristics of a healthy relationship and make improvements in all of these things when it comes to food. But you're going to have to get out. Learn to respect your body so that you will treat it respectfully with healthy food, with movement. Learn to be honest. I make excuses in these following ways. I'm no longer going to make excuses. I'm going to be honest with myself about my relationship with food. Learn skills to trust yourself. Get help and learn the skills so that you can trust yourself to have one and stop. Unless you have a food addiction, different issue, but get help for that then. If you lack the ability to compromise, yeah, I don't have to go all or nothing. I can have a little of this on the holiday and then I'm going to do extra exercise or I'm going to eat healthier, nutrient-dense foods the rest of the week, right? Eating well most of the time and allowing the occasions for lesser healthy foods, right? If you have trouble doing things on your own, get the help you need because, as Mel Robbins says, nobody's coming to make you do these things. So get the help you need. If you need to learn to set boundaries with people and food, get the help you need to do that. And then look in the mirror and ask yourself some questions, right? This is hard work, but how do you talk to yourself? That's a hard thing to do, right? But calling yourself names is not going to get you to a healthier relationship with food. Piling guilt and shame is like being in an unhealthy relationship. I'm going to do better, I'm going to do better, I'm going to do better, and then bam, it happens again, and then I'm all negative and beating up on myself again. That's a negative abuse cycle, and you're doing it to yourself. So get rid of the shoulding, get rid of the labeling yourself. I'm a failure and a loser. Quit catastrophizing. Making an unhealthier food choice doesn't mean you're doomed. Don't catastrophize, but you got to learn these skills, right? So let's get to some take-home messages. All healthy relationships with whatever, people, things, are based on a healthy relationship with yourself. That's where you have got to start. So do some self-discovery, my friends. Find out what the obstacles are and what you can do to make those different. What are your obstacles? Not what other people are doing or what society is doing. What are your obstacles? Get some help to work through those things. And I'm going to encourage you now to talk to food and write it a letter. Talk to food like, what are you going to do for me? How are you going to make this situation better? Yeah, you'll make me feel better for 10 minutes and then I'm going to feel worse. So what good are you? And then dump it down the toilet instead of eat it. Right? Talk to it. Work through some of your issues by talking to the food that you would otherwise consume to make yourself feel better. Learn to deal with what's really bothering you. And then write it a letter. Dear food, I've read some of the greatest letters that people have shared with me. You know what? You were my friend. You were my companion. You were my, I could always count on you. You didn't talk back to me. You were there when I needed you. But you're killing me. Literally, you're killing me. We got to change this relationship. I need you in my life. I want you in my life, but things have got to change. You're not going to do it, so I'm going to do it. I have to learn, blah, 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 blah. Write the letter to food. Read it out loud to your therapist. Don't have a therapist? Get a therapist. If you've got an unhealthy relationship with food and you've been unable to change it, you need to get a therapist. And don't talk about food with the therapist. Talk about the reasons you're using food in an unhealthy way. All right, friends, that's a lot, but it's good stuff. Got to develop a healthy relationship, balance in all of your areas of life, and it's going to come from within. All right, there you go. Oh, what a way to start. The new day, the new week, the new life, the new year, right? We are doing things to work toward putting forth effort on a consistent basis so that you can live the life you dream of living. Join us in BariAftercare. We help get you there in lots of ways. We help each other. All right, see you next time. Thanks for being part of the journey with me. Bye-bye.